News coming in now from the eastern part of Ukraine. This is in an area called Luhansk, where reports are suggesting that a strong, loud explosion has been heard. And looks like, at this point, an oil depot is on fire. It's important to highlight why this is important, because of the fact that this is happening in eastern Ukraine, a rebel-held area in that of Luhansk. Now, an oil depot has been set ablaze in this particular area, and you see that on your screens as well, the thick plumes of smoke that are going up in the air. There's going to be a lot of questions about what's really led to this incident in the rebel-held area of Luhansk. You're seeing an oil depot being set ablaze. There's been a clear mission by Russia here to target oil depots, to target any energy hubs, which is why last week we saw also nuclear power plants being targeted. Now news coming in of an oil depot being set on fire in the rebel-held area of Luhansk. By rebel-held, we mean, of course, that this is a part of Ukraine that's considered to be pro-Russia. So it is on the Russian side. In fact, initially, before this conflict, before the full-fledged war had begun, it started off with Russia, with Putin declaring many of these parts of eastern Ukraine as independent. Let's take this across to Elnar. He is a journalist who's joining us from Moscow. Elnar, you've been joining us here on India Today and constantly getting us insights of what's happening. There's a lot of questions right now what's playing out in Luhansk. It's a rebel-held area where now we understand an oil depot is also on fire. Any information you're able to pick up on this?
Unfortunately, in Russia, we cannot confirm this information, neither confirm, neither deny this information, because we are in state of military operation, let's call it like this. According to Russian laws, although some call it war or invasion, in Russia we call it military operation. So we cannot confirm, neither deny this information, but it seems to be true, because Luhansk and Donetsk, these are the regions of the most developed in industrial field. So they have oil refineries, and it might be logical that Ukrainian side would like to take away these petroleum tankers, these oil refineries. So it might be logical, but it seems illogical of the further military action.
Understandable, yeah. What you're saying also is what everyone's asking right now. But Elnar, focusing really on how Russia's progressed, 12 days now of the conflict, of the war in Ukraine. We're hearing now that Russian troops are inching closer to the capital city of Kyiv, and also that the fighting, very aggressive fighting, continues in Kharkiv. Russia so far hasn't managed, yes, to gain control of any of these big cities?
Russia still has no control of Kyiv, neither of Kharkiv, but it seems like Kharkiv may fall in these coming days, because at this night, we have these reports from the journalists on the ground. We've seen that Russian army continued bombing Kharkiv this night, and some sports and other civilian infrastructure objects were damaged this night. And we see that people are escaping from Kharkiv, and we see the same happening in Kyiv, which is the capital of Ukraine. We await that the further operation to siege Kyiv might continue in the upcoming days. And according to some of my sources, according to some politicians I've talked to, they have stated that Russia would take Kyiv and is trying to approach to Bucha and Irpin, which are the suburbs of Kyiv already, and maybe Kyiv would fall after the Kharkiv. So I guess they are continuing to further approach on the different levels. So they're trying to come from the south, from the cities of Nikolaev, from the cities of Chernihiv, Sumy, and they're trying to come from the Kharkiv side and from the north, from the Kyiv side. So according to the 12th day of the military operation of this war, we see that Russians are approaching from three sides, from three parts of Ukraine, from the north, from the east, and from the south.
So from what you're telling us, Elnar, does it look like Russia is hoping to capture Kharkiv as well as Kyiv by the end of this week?
I guess so. Because, we have only one thing we cannot confirm neither deny this information, but we see that some politicians among the world, they are trying to find out the diplomatic solution to this issue. Yesterday, Vladimir Putin had talks with the Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, in the morning and in the late hours of the evening, and he also had phone call with the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. And with Macron, they discussed the nuclear safety of the Ukrainian nuclear power plants, especially the nuclear power plant Zaporizhia, which is the biggest in Europe. And we have two different versions of what was discussed. According to the Kremlin, Russia and France and international atomic energy agencies, they might held some meeting in the very close time. According to Putin, this meeting might be held via the Zoom or video, and according to France discussed the urgent need for the peaceful solution of the Ukrainian crisis, and we neither cannot confirm neither deny this information. Also, President Putin also had conversation with the president of Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Turkey is special mediator in this conflict because Turkey has very good military and trade cooperation both with Ukraine and both with Russia. We know that Turkey is purchasing Russian S-400 missile systems, as well as we know that Turkey is also selling its military equipment to Ukraine. We know that Bayraktars are being sold to Ukraine, and right now we see that they are being used by Ukrainian fighters. So Turkey is like very possible mediator in this conflict, and we know in advance that next week the foreign minister of Russia is going to Antalya, the southern city of Turkey, where the diplomatic forum is going to take place. We yet don't know the official program was going to be discussed there, but the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, Mr. Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, he already pointed that he hopes for the meeting of the Russian and Ukrainian foreign minister in this Antalya diplomatic forum. So all eyes on this forum will be this week, I guess.
It's important that you put that in context also for us, Elnar, about so many countries now stepping in, having a conversation with President Putin. There's going to be also the next round of talks between Russia and Ukraine to end this conflict. Considering there is also so many other countries who are considering mediating on this, how do you think this level and this round of talks will play out this time? What's Russia's message and what's their hope from this dialogue?
As we have seen from the second round of this dialogue, it might be useful because we have seen that there was evacuation corridors, humanitarian corridors from the cities of Mariupol and Volnovakha in the southeast of Ukraine. And according to Russia, Russia provided all necessary needs for these corridors for the civilians to get away and evacuate from the cities. But according to Ukrainian side, we see that they claim that Russian soldiers still continue to obstacle and to continue fire to civilians, so it's not possible to evacuate. Russians claim and accuse that it's Ukrainian side and Ukrainian neo-Nazis, so put it this way, they are trying to prevent civilians to get away and escape from the cities because according to Russian side, Ukrainian side is using the civilians as a life shield so that Russians cannot bomb their positions.
Elnar, just request you to stay on with me. I just want to play out what Ukraine President Zelensky said earlier in his video message. He's urged countries now to come forward across the world and impose more sanctions against Russia. Here's what Zelensky said.
Зухвалість агресора – це чіткий сигнал для Заходу, що застосованих проти Росії санкцій недостатньо, бо там не зрозуміли, не відчули, не побачили, що світ дійсно рішучий, дійсно прагне зупинити цю війну. Ви не сховаєтесь від цієї реальності, ви не сховаєтесь від нових вбивств в Україні.
Elnar, coming back to you on that, we just played out what Zelensky said. He's saying sanctions against Russia are not enough. Is there a fear in Moscow that more steps could be taken? Not sure if Elnar is with us. All right, Elnar, back with us. Elnar, okay. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We just played out what Zelensky has said. Is there a worry in Russia that there could be perhaps more action? And we're not just talking about sanctions against the country by different countries?
Yes, we don't know whether there might be further sanctions, although Ukrainian politicians, they are trying to impose more sanctions and to urge and convince Western politicians that more sanctions is needed so that to prevent Russia from the continuation of military operation. But as far as we know from what the American politician, from the Undersecretary, Miss Victoria Nuland, announced last week to the Rain TV channel and to TASS news agency, sanctions might be reviewed and maybe even withdrawn if Russia stops its military operation in Ukraine. So we don't know whether the sanctions are temporarily or they are for us, with us for the long period of time. What we know that it is possible that West and other countries like Japan might impose more sanctions against Russia. But as we see for now, these sanctions don't play much role in changing Russian policies because Russia, as we see from the 12th day of this military operation, has not changed its position. Russia still continues to approach to the different Ukrainian cities. So I don't think that these sanctions could play any role in like rescheduling Russian military operation. And this is why I don't think that sanctions really put pressure to the Mr. Putin or other politicians in taking their decisions. But these sanctions could be proved that they are causing much damage to the Russian economy. But I don't think that Russian politicians are taking these sanctions as a matter that really changes the direction of the military operation.
Elnar, one final question to you before I let you go, and that is about the big development that came in of the United States saying that NATO will go ahead and send fighter jets if they want to. NATO countries can do that to Ukraine. Has there been any statement or reaction from Moscow on that?
As we see from the initial days of the military operation, as Mr. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, announced in his speech to the nation in the first days of this military operation, if any party, if any other country would involve, there would be direct interference and would be considered by Russians as the actual act of war. So, we have seen the statements from the Russian politicians that if any countries would involve, it would be the direct interference and might be continuation of the military conflict with Russia directly. So this is why we only have this in media, for example, in Wall Street Journal, that the United States approved the delivery of F-16s firefighters jets to the Poland, instead that Poland would send its MiG-29 jets to Ukraine. But the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs had to deny this information because neither Poland, neither other NATO countries are going actually to involve in this operation. So I don't think that any NATO country would send its jets directly to Ukraine. But we could see that more and more Western countries are sending its military equipment. Even Germany is sending. And we see from the news, from what the Ukraine's foreign ministry is believing, that the Ukraine is receiving more and more international fighters from all around the world. But we cannot confirm this information from Russian side.
All right, Elnar, appreciate you joining us as always here on India Today and giving us an insight of really what's playing out right now. Thanks for the moment for joining us. As we focus on what's happening right now in Ukraine, and we just got your perspective from Moscow as well as to exactly what their strategy is. They're closing in on the city of Kyiv. We've been talking about this for the last many days, and we're getting footage also of how Russian troops, this has been released by the Russian Defense Ministry, of them inching closer and closer with armored vehicles, with trucks, all heading towards Kyiv. In the face of this kind of a challenge, many civilians have been stepping up, saying that we will fight and protect our soil. We will ensure Russian troops don't enter into Ukraine. Many women have stepped up, saying we will also fight. Geeta Mohan, who's been sending us constant reports from Kyiv, shows us what it's like for a civilian to don the army uniform, to don that bulletproof jacket, extremely heavy, hold a rifle in their hands, which they've never done before.
Marine Corps, a crucial part of the Ukrainian forces. The gentleman over here is going to show how the women in the Marine Corps wear the bulletproof jackets. A very heavy one. Are you going to demonstrate? Yes. He wants me to wear it and see. An experience for myself. Oh my God, that is heavy. That is really heavy. So this is what the women in the Ukrainian armed forces wear. It's pretty heavy. And then okay, that's what he does. Okay, and then the helmet. Yes, that's standing with Ukraine. Standing with Ukraine. And then okay.
अपना मुंह छुपाया ना उसने.
See, it's interesting. The gentlemen over here, all right, but they're from the Marine Corps, so they're not going to show us their faces. So he's covered it because he was helping me. He's covered his face and he's come here. Okay, I'm not going to hold. Do you want me to hold the gun as well?
Yes.
I've never held. Oh, good Lord. Okay, so this is pretty difficult. Is this how it goes? My God. So this is how the women. Oh, I can't breathe. You need tremendous amount of training to be able to do this. To be able to hold a gun, to be able to wear this life jacket, this vest, this bulletproof vest, and the helmet, which is also pretty heavy, and then go into combat to fight for Ukraine against the Russians. With Kuldeep.
Thank you.
In one of the camps over here. In Kyiv, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Truly eye-opening report that, because it shows you what civilians are doing right now, how many of them have never worn those kind of fatigues or bulletproof jackets. They've never held a rifle, and yet they're doing that, saying that we will push back the Russians at any cost. Gaurav Sawant, who's been getting us all of these reports from Kyiv, is joining us live now on this broadcast. Gaurav, we're getting in a lot of extremely telling images and videos of Russian troops inching closer and closer to Kyiv. The Russian Defense Ministry has put out a video now of their tanks and armored vehicles moving closer to the capital.
They indeed are. In fact, there have been a series of very fierce strikes that have taken place in three pockets, virtually the suburbs of Kyiv, in Bucha, in Irpin, in Ostomel, and these are areas that Russia has been trying to target from day one. But since yesterday, in the past 24 to 36 hours, these operations have now intensified, just from being airstrikes and missile strikes to ground strikes that are now taking place. So that 63-kilometer long Russian convoy that was being talked about, where is that convoy? That convoy now is virtually at the outskirts of Kyiv, is what we are being told by the army here, and also by the governor. We spoke to Oleksiy Kuleba, the governor of the Kyiv region, and he said there is a very systematic attack that is taking place from the Russian side at Bucha, at Ostomel, and at Irpin, and there have been civilian casualties according to the governor here, according to the administration here. But then their assessment is, the Ukrainian assessment is, that this is where they will be able to counter the advance of the Russian forces. They've been able to stall it for the past 24 to 48 hours, and they're hopeful of doing it longer. But this isn't the only attack that's taking place. If you notice, there is a thrust line that is coming in from here. There is also an intensification of operations both in Mariupol in the east, where again there have been very intense operations in the Donetsk and Luhansk region in the past 12 hours, and also in the south. Now Kherson, there have been intense missile strikes on the airfield there, is what we are learning. So there is a multi-pronged attack that is taking place from the north, east and south. West is the only relatively safer area, and west is the area which is being used, one, for evacuation of people, two, for resources and replenishment and supplies to come in. And the biggest apprehension here now is, Akshita, from the west. The moment the Russians start targeting the west, that means Kyiv is being targeted from all four flanks, from all four sides. Russian forces advancing from three and stopping replenishments coming in from the fourth. And should that happen, how long will Kyiv survive the siege remains the biggest question and the crisis here at this point of time.
Gaurav, I just want to focus on the video that's on our screens right now. This is from Luhansk, eastern part of Ukraine, where there's an oil depot that's been set on fire. There was reports of a huge explosion that was reported as well. Eastern Ukraine, as you very well know, and Luhansk is a rebel-held territory, which is why it sparked a lot of questions about whether this is an attack by Ukraine.
So the Ukrainian forces, and that's the point that the government and the army were making to us when they gave us exclusive access, not just to one of their bunkers and interaction with some of their commanders, but also with the governor of the Kyiv region. Their point is, now we are launching counter-attacks that, as they claim, they are saying that we are taking this battle into the enemy camps. Instead of the Russians pushing us back, the Ukrainians say that we are not fighting a defensive war, we are fighting an offensive war. We are taking this battle into Luhansk, into Donetsk, and targeting some of the what the Russians now say is the independent republic of Donetsk and Luhansk. So they're taking the battle in those areas. They claim that they've taken 3 more towns in that area. This oil dump that's been set on fire, extremely crucial, because fuel, POL, as they say in military parlance, petrol, oil and lubricants, extremely critical for the movement of military convoys and weapons of war. So for all the tanks and the multi-launch rocket systems and for armored personal carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, they would require POL, which is being targeted by the Ukrainians in the east, because the thrust in the east is also not just very important for negotiations subsequently, if at all, but also to cut off the entire Donbass region that Russia wanted to take away. Russia wants to ensure that the Russian language speaking pockets remain in their sphere of influence. That's why the attack on Donbass, in Luhansk and in Donetsk, also the attacks in Kherson towards the south, the big attack on Kharkiv, and of course now the main thrust that's coming from the north and the northwest towards the capital Kyiv, which eerily actually the battle lines are actually inching closer to towards the capital from the suburbs, Akshita.
What will be concerning, I'm sure, also for Ukrainians, Gaurav, is 2 aspects of the Russian strategy and the attacks. One is the fact that they've been targeting energy hubs constantly, clearly aiming at a power blackout of some sort across Ukraine. Secondly, now what's been happening over the weekend of air bases, of airports being targeted by Russians.
Systematic strategy, as you very correctly point out. This is systematic strategy of the Russians. One, to ensure that communications, travel, airfields, so 14 major airfields, Ukrainians were hoping to repair and restore some of them, because the runways have been targeted, the radars have been targeted, making them completely ineffective for the Ukrainian Air Force to exploit. 70 aircraft is what Ukraine hopes to acquire through Poland in the next couple of days, and they're extremely hopeful. We are told that some of those aircraft are operational. They're airworthy in terms of the life of the airframe, life of components on board, weapons and systems on board. We still need to cross-check those facts. But the information is, when those aircraft come in, they require some airfields. Here, Kherson airfield was targeted, Vinnytsia was targeted, several other airfields on the Russian radar to take down. The entire effort is Zaporozhye in control of the Russians, Chernobyl, non-operational but in control of the Russians. They're moving very close to the third nuclear reactor. So 15 nuclear reactors in here, 6 already in Russian control. The others they intend to target in the next 24 to 48 hours. The governor here was telling us that gas supply is already adversely impacted in -2 degrees Celsius temperature. Right now it's -2 here in Kyiv. In sub-zero temperature, when you control energy, when you control fuel, you control gas and you control nuclear energy, 50% of this country runs on nuclear energy, then perhaps Russia will use energy or fuel as a weapon again to target Ukraine and try and enforce a regime change. So all of this is happening with two major agendas, as we've been talking from day 1 and today is day 12 of these operations. 1, remove President Zelensky. 2, demilitarize this country. Again, the country intends and is as of now fighting back and fighting hard, Akshata.
And that's perhaps why Putin put out that appeal, saying everyone should surrender now, that Ukraine must surrender. That's not clearly happening on the ground. Gaurav, you mentioned your conversation with the Kyiv governor. Just stay with us, because I just want to play out an excerpt of the conversation that you had with the governor on what's really happening in the capital city. We'll come right back to you.
The attack on Kyiv is imminent. This is the map of the Kyiv region, and with us on this special broadcast is Oleksiy Kuleba, the governor of Kyiv. My colleague Shweta Singh and I are posing some questions to him about the threat that Kyiv faces at this point of time. Governor, the attack is coming in on this map. Can you tell us where all are the Russian forces? Where is the main attack coming from at this point of time?
Our main attack came from Zhytomyr district and Vyshgorod district.
Okay.
Are you worried for the civilians, the people who are living here?
One more. Yes, of course. We worried about everyone who have problem living here, yeah, and we have register each people, each problem, and we will find all of them, and we will help all of them.
Sir, electricity and gas, that apparently is a problem in Mariupol, in some other places. What is the situation in Kyiv? Are you fearing that electricity and gas could be a problem for the people still in Kyiv?
I will give you inclusive information as you like. 1 hour ago we have a problem with gas because we have a damage from airplane, Russian rocket, and we made decision, and nearly 100 people will have no gas at all, because that's problem. We have to ask all the world to close the sky from the Russian rockets.
And there are reports that a lot of civilians have come back to Ukraine, to Kyiv. How many would you say?
More than 100,000 people crossed the border to Kyiv. It's all men that will fight for our country.
Governor, the attack, we are told, is happening at Hostomel, in Irpin, in Bucha. How much time, in your appreciation, before this part of Kyiv where we are, how safe is this, and how safe is this likely to remain?
It's very simple. Never. Never.
So the threat is real. The threat to Kyiv is real. Whether it's the artillery, whether it's the rockets or the air attack, and this is where the governor says they will stay and defend Kyiv, and people are coming in for it. For talking to India Today, Governor, many thanks. With Shweta Singh and camera person Pawan Kumar in Kyiv, Ukraine, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
Taking this back across to Gaurav Sawant, who's been getting us those detailed ground reports also from the capital of Kyiv. Gaurav, I want to focus on the point I mentioned earlier about Putin's message to Ukrainians saying, surrender now, let's stop this conflict. What was the kind of reaction that came in from Ukraine on Putin's address there?
The bravery and the commitment of the Ukrainian fighters is amazing to see, and I don't mean just the army. Now that I've interacted with some people of the army, some of the territorial defense, some of the civil militia, and civilians on ground, till late last night, despite there being curfew, there's curfew at sundown. So while we were reporting and we were with the governor, and then at a military bunker, it was beyond curfew hour. So some Ukrainian soldiers, they actually kept relaying the message across that this particular car that I was driving should be cleared of all patrols, because we still do not have a curfew pass or a martial law pass to be able to go through. That it's in the pipeline. But the fact remains that even now, every checkpoint you stop at or every supermarket you go to, that commitment remains that this is a fight for the country. This is a fight for the motherland. They may or may not agree with President Zelensky, but they do not want to be ruled or be told by outsiders what they should do. So this is a fight to protect their self-respect and their honor, is what virtually everyone, told us in streets, in supermarkets, wherever we meet them, or in military convoys. The fact that every civilian is now donning a uniform and fighting. The fact that with 3 days military training, the 3 days weapon fighting training, if you haven't held a weapon ever in your hand, there is shortage of ammunition. So restricted firing, you just taught the drills. You said, okay, aim, fire, aim, fire. Veterans called in to say, okay, this is a ATGM. We have very restricted supply of ATGMs. This is how you operated it in 2014. This is how you need to operate now, aim, fire. And yet the Ukrainians say that it's caused massive damage to the Russian artillery, to the Russian tanks, to the Russian armored columns, and surface-to-air missiles and air defense systems. Despite 12 days, just late yesterday, we were told another Su-25 was brought down in Kharkiv that was targeting one of the military installations. So there was a surface-to-air battery there, and it successfully brought down the Russian aircraft. Ukraine is claiming that in 11 days of war, I have information till late last night, it's still about 7 in the morning here, till late last night, they had downed 94 Russian fighter jets, attack helicopters and transport helicopters. 94. Again, a huge number, even, in 12 days of conflict, where it isn't an all-out conflict, according to the Russians, they're only targeting systematic military installations. So 12 days, surface-to-air defense systems, air defense systems, they haven't been able to be completely neutralized. And yesterday, while we cannot show it on camera, we saw one such system for the defense of Kyiv here in the national capital, and it still remains operational. So this goes on to indicate that there is fighting spirit, they're fighting back, that they also very openly say that Ukrainians lack weapons and systems to sustain this fight.
And I want to discuss that exactly, Gaurav, the mention of, a lack of weapons. A big development that's come in, and this is amid Zelensky saying that the world isn't doing enough to support them, is the United States confirming that NATO has now given the nod for fighter jets to be sent to Ukraine. But the question that everyone's asking is 12 days into the conflict, into the war, is this too little, too late being done?
So there are multiple aspects to this, and this is again a question that we put to a military commander, but he chose not to answer it, is where will these aircraft come from? Are these operational aircraft? Are these those old mothballed Russian aircraft that even Poland is no longer using? And if these are mothballed aircraft, what can they be used for except cannibalizing parts that still remain airworthy? When it comes to fighter jets, there are multiple aspects. The airframe has to be airworthy. Components have to be airworthy. How many flying hours has it done? How many flying hours remain? What kind of weapons and systems? And are the pilots are the pilots trained on that particular aircraft? I mean, a Su pilot cannot just start flying a MiG-29, or a MiG-29 pilot cannot start flying a Sukhoi. But who will train them, who will get them in Air Force parlance au fait on these aircraft, and how quickly? Also, where will the weapons come from on these aircraft? There are no mid-air refuelers. Where will these aircraft refuel? Will they land in Ukraine? Where will they land in Ukraine? These are some aspects which the Ukrainians say we are working out answers. 70 of our pilots, some serving, some retired, are already in Poland. The Polish route is still being used. It's the same Lviv route, we are told. Both land by road and by train, we are told that resources continue to pour into this country. One intelligence input, and this is an intelligence input which one of the officials had shared, seemed to indicate that multiple wide-bodied aircraft had flown into neighboring countries with weapons, and in some instances with contractors and mercenaries from neighboring areas. They were coming in and they were very genned up on the equipment that was coming in, since they'd used that equipment in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So all of that equipment is slowly flowing in. Those teams will also be deployed to take on the Russians. But at best, will this only prolong the inevitable, or is it not inevitable? All of these are questions that are being asked, but some assessments, some analysts argue, Akshita, that if the Ukrainians are unable to hold on to Bucha and Irpin and Ostomel, then forces flow in. All these resources from the north and the northwest, the Russian might will flow into the streets of Kyiv, where there will be street by street by street fighting till they try and reach the presidential palace and take control of the national capital. They've devastated several other cities. Will they do the same in Kyiv? Remains to be seen. But the fact remains, and India Today has been showing you ground reports of how every major arterial road and some service roads have also been covered with camouflage nets and barriers and barricades and hedgehogs. It's like a World War II movie playing out on the streets of Kyiv at this point of time. But unfortunately, this isn't a movie. This is very, very real. The threat of a Russian invasion, of a Russian attack in Kyiv is now very real, Akshita.
It's truly scary to see the kind of images that we've been putting out from Gaurav's reports and all of our reporters there on India Today. Stay safe out there, Gaurav. Appreciate you joining us and getting us all of those inputs this morning. We'll, of course, keep going across to Gaurav. He was telling us what's the situation right now in the capital city of Kyiv, where it looks like an attack by Russians is imminent. Here's why. What Gaurav was talking about is that in the capital city of Kyiv right now, you've got Russian troops coming in from Belarus down into Kyiv. On this side, also, they're gathering in large numbers. Now, the problem is that in many of these other cities bordering Kyiv, they're starting to make inroads. So if the cities like Irpin, which is what Gaurav was referring to, fall to Russia, there's maximum fighting happening there. They then surround the capital city, which is why right now in Kyiv, the situation is very, very worrying, and security has been upped every road. There is a blanket of security, blockades, hedgehogs being put up. Here's what a reporter saw.
Any steel plant, any welding plant, any iron, any industry that's engaged with any iron works, they have stopped everything. All that they're manufacturing are these hedgehogs, these barriers, and these are extremely crucial. This is iron. It's a cross, this is a barrier. Their aim is to block the advance of the Russian tanks and the Russian armored personnel carriers.
The city, Kyiv, has changed drastically in just days. Air raid sirens are a constant.
That's an air raid siren going up once again, which means an air attack is imminent. That's an air raid siren going up here in Kyiv, and this is the heart of Kyiv. So if an air raid siren is going up here, it could point to perhaps an incoming hostile. It could be an aircraft that's coming in. It could be, a missile coming in. We do not know. But the air raid siren is just going off here in Kyiv.
Streets are completely empty. Checkpoints and roadblocks dot the capital.
There are personnel around me. What you can also see is sandbags being put all over this place. Even as you and I speak, this is Kyiv bracing for an imminent air attack. Volunteers are coming forward, as you see in these images. Now, these are gunny bags filled with sand, and they are being stacked up one on top of the other. This is full of sand that's been brought into this area, and one after the other, this place is being stacked up.
The Russian forces are already near Irpin, a suburb bordering Kyiv. Russian missiles are not even sparing civilians at Irpin. Kyiv is surrounded. A 60-kilometer long Russian convoy is parked just outside the capital. A ferocious all-out attack on Kyiv may be a matter of moments.
At the Freedom Square here in Kyiv, Ukrainians coming together to help mobilize and support their forces to ensure that the Russian forces are not able to breach this capital city of Ukraine.
With a final push, the Russians hope to gain control of the capital. How long can the capital stand free? With Gaurav Sawant and Geeta Mohan in Kyiv battle zone, Bureau Report, India Today.